All right, here we go. So 10.3, this lesson's on our double angle formulas. And what that is the sine or the cosine or whatever it is of an angle times 2. So it's kind of literally it's sine of an angle. So let's call it alpha plus alpha, because what is alpha plus alpha? Well, it's 2 times alpha. And hopefully, as soon as we write it that way, you realize exactly where we're going to be heading it. This is just going to be our angle sum identities. So we've got, instead of our beta like we've had before, our beta now is another alpha. And so let's go ahead and write out what that will give us. So we know that sine of alpha plus beta is sine of alpha times the cosine of beta. But what's our beta this time? Well, it's alpha again. So sine alpha times cosine alpha plus sine of beta, which for us again is just alpha again, times cosine alpha. And looking at that, well, what is sine alpha times cosine alpha plus sine alpha times cosine alpha? Well, it's 2 times sine alpha cosine alpha. And so that hopefully makes quite a bit of sense. That if the part that's probably tripping you up, if that's not pretty straightforward, is back from 10.1, and so maybe I'd go back and spend some more time familiarizing yourself with 10.1. Cosine of 2 alpha, real similar here, is going to be, well, cosine of alpha plus alpha, and that's going to give us, maybe we should change colors here. So cosine of alpha plus alpha, that's going to be cosine of alpha times cosine of beta, but our beta is just alpha again, so cosine alpha times cosine alpha, which is going to be cosine squared of alpha, minus sine of alpha times sine of beta, which for us again is alpha. And so cleaning this one up, this is going to give us cosine squared of alpha minus sine squared of alpha, and there we go. Another way to kind of think of that one then is that, hey, what if we replace, change this all into terms of cosine? And so this is true in and of itself, but let's change that sine squared into a cosine squared. So here's same idea. If this is going to be cosine squared alpha minus, and now what is sine squared alpha? That's going to be 1 minus cosine squared alpha. That's the equivalent of sine squared alpha. All right, distribute that negative, and we get that this is really equal to cosine squared alpha plus, minus 1 plus cosine squared alpha, which all simplifies down to 2 cosine squared alpha. So 2 times cosine squared alpha minus 1. All right, 2 times cosine squared alpha minus 1. We could also write this one if we'd gone back up here and written this instead of terms of cosine. So we can take cosine times cosine of 2 times alpha, and we can write that also in just terms of sine. And so if we took cosine squared alpha, that's going to be the same thing as sine squared, or 1 minus sine squared alpha. So I'm just replacing it from back up here. So it's going to be 1 minus sine squared alpha. Just replacing that in there. Minus sine squared alpha. The second half from back up here. And 1 this is equal to 1 minus sine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha, so minus 2 times sine squared alpha. All right, there's another identity for our double angle formulas. Lastly, we've got tangent. The tangent we learned was tangent of alpha plus alpha. That alpha plus beta we learned was tangent of alpha plus tangent of beta, but for us that's alpha again because it's the angle multiplied by itself, or multiplied by 2 rather, over 1 minus tangent alpha times tangent beta, but for us that's alpha again. And so this is going to be equal to 2 times tangent alpha over 1 minus tangent squared alpha. And there's our formula. So just to go back through and be kind of a little more explicit about all of this, the sine of 2a, sine of an angle alpha times 2, is equivalent to 2 times the sine of alpha times cosine of alpha. Cosine has a few different ways of looking at it. One's going to be cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha. Notice that's a minus right there. And this is cosine times 2 alpha. It's also 2 times cosine squared alpha minus 1. And it's also 1 minus 2 times sine squared of alpha. And then lastly, tangent of 2 alpha is equal to 2 times the tangent of alpha over or divided by 1 minus tangent squared alpha. Now that's a lot of stuff to memorize. I don't know personally that I would really spend a lot of time memorizing that. I would probably recommend more just practicing and working on memorizing the stuff from 10.1, your angle addition and angle subtractions, and then just build these out. These are all pretty quick to build out. They were all only 1 or 2 steps once we knew what was going on there. So but there they are. If you prefer the memorization route, then by all means do that. But there you go. That you'll be using those for the rest of this lesson. So hope that helps.